Just waiting a few minutes for people to join, and then we'll begin. Right, so I think we'll begin now. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Claire Fenelow. I'm Executive Director at EVCOM, and delighted you could all join us this afternoon. This is, I think, about the fourth event in our series in support of International Women's Day. And I'm delighted to say that we are collaborating on many of these events with the HBAA to create a programme of events and content that cater to the intersection of our audiences and to both of our wider audiences. And I would say this year, probably more than ever, collaboration has been a really, really important part of all of us getting through this situation. And I think an essential part of collaborating, I'm sure everybody would agree, is hearing all the voices in the room and making sure that when we do say collaborate, we sincerely mean collaborate, and that is with all sections of any workforce and the community that you work within. And to that end, today's session is called Welcome, it's not, I'm reading that. It's called Perspective on the Events Industry from the Next Generation. And we felt it really, really important that a lot of the webinars and events that EVCOM put on is that, you know, we invite the CEO or the MD or someone to speak about things, and what you then get is one specific viewpoint of things. So in speaking to the next generation of people in our events sector, we're hoping to hear what they think about how the industry is working and what steps they need to take to change, and how they perceive the changing face of the industry, and in particular with the situations that we've all dealt with over the last 12 months. So we've got a fantastic panel of speakers, and I will leave it to Amelia and the panel to introduce themselves. But I'm really looking forward to hearing their stories, and particularly hearing their views on where we go next. Okay, so Amelia, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you so much, Claire, for that lovely introduction. So yeah, really excited to be here with this wonderful group of panelists. We're going to be hearing about their perspective on various sections of the events industry and issues within it. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, but I'm just going to say their names first so you know who we're with. So we've got the wonderful Jade Clark from the Telegraph, Georgia Cross from Cheerful 21st, Beckie Towle from Events Raccoon, Benedicta Asante from Events 101, and Alex Beckett from Wolf and White. So if I could ask you each to introduce yourselves, and if we could start with Jade, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Amelia, for inviting me today. So I've been in the events industry now for just over 2 years. As you said, I currently work at the Telegraph, looking after the events operations and logistics side, and that involves B2B events, conferences, exhibitions, and also panel and interview events.
Fantastic. If I could pass over to Georgia now.
Thank you, Amelia, and thanks for having me today as well. I'm Georgia Cross. I'm the marketing manager at Cheerful 21st. We're a creative brand experience agency that specialises in audience engagement and strategic comms campaigns as well. So a lot of what we do kind of falls into the events and experiences remit. I've probably been in the industry for about, maybe 5 or 6 years now, and work really closely with our team here in the UK. And also we've got a team in the States as well. And I work really kind of closely across both those teams to help understand what brands are looking for, how audiences can kind of be engaged, and really positioning our agency as kind of the right partner to help businesses, I guess, connect those two.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Georgia. And now if we could hear from Beckie, please.
Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, again, really happy to be here. So I'm Beckie. I'm the Chief Amazement Officer at the Events Raccoon. and I also sit on the board of directors for the HBAA. The Events Raccoon is an event agency. We are just in our 5th year, and we specialise also in the audience engagement and kind of why people get in a room together or get together, and helping our clients with all the elements of pulling that together, from the event design to the delivery and the aftermath in terms of rolling that out.
Thank you very much, Beckie. And if we could hear from Benedicta next, please.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was on mute. Well, hi, I'm Benedicta Asante. I'm one of the founders of Events 101. And Events 101 is just simply a platform championing diversity in the events industry, and also creating more opportunities for young people in the events industry through like job creation and education.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Benedicta. And finally, if we could hear from Alex.
Thanks, Amelia. Great to be with you ladies today. I'm Alex Beckett, Project Director at Wolf & White. We are an events and production agency managing everything from content development, brand launches, through to live and virtual events delivery. So we're lucky enough to be a full service agency with a lot of our kind of teams and experience sitting in-house.
Fantastic, thank you. Really great to have you all here. So I just wanted to first ask about your journeys in the events industry, how and why you got involved with the events industry, what drew you to it, and what your journey has been so far from getting involved to where you are now. So I'm going to go in the same order, if that's all right, for ease. So Jade, could we start with you, please? Yeah,
absolutely. So sort of all my life, I've always really worked in customer service facing roles. I've always really liked that. And it was only, I think it was in sixth form, I got involved with an in-house charity that we supported within my school. And I helped organise a charity ball. And it really got me thinking, like, I really enjoyed the experience. I didn't find it like a task. I just really enjoyed it. And it was only at that point that I sort of discovered that events management was a thing. I wasn't really aware of it up until then. And obviously at that point I was making my choices of university course and all that kind of thing. So that was when I kind of discovered events. And I went on then to study events management at Cardiff Metropolitan University. So I finished that in 2018. I graduated. I then wanted to just get straight stuck in, so I did a few internships, and then just over 2 years ago I started at the Telegraph, so that's where I've been for the past 2 years. And I think the main thing that drew me to it, as I said, I've always been in customer service, and it's that delivery of a really great experience for someone. I think everyone can probably agree that the best part is the event day itself and seeing it all to come together and seeing everyone have a great time. And that's really sort of like the main pull for me. So sort of over the past 2 years, I've been working on the operations and logistics of our events. And as I mentioned in my intro, we run a really wide variety of events. So I've had the pleasure and great opportunity to work on lots of different sectors. So I've worked on our B2B conferences, which include Women Mean Business and Tech Intel. Also our sort of bigger consumer exhibitions like Stella Live, which is our lifestyle magazine. So bringing that to life. Also the Ski and Snowboard Festival. So that's sort of what's been going on over the past 2 years, but also throughout that, sort of our focus is on bringing our journalism to life and creating great experiences for our subscribers. So that also involves panel interviews, one-to-one interviews, all sort of involving our journalists and sort of connecting with our subscribers. So that's sort of my journey so far. And then, as I'm sure we'll touch on a bit later, so I won't go into too much detail, but over the past 12 months, we've obviously been pivoted to doing virtual events. So I've been very lucky to still be working and sort of learning all these new skills. I think we were sort of joking before coming on that we've all become technicians over the past year, sort of having to learn all of that side of things. And so, yeah, that's been really successful. We're busier than ever. I've got 4 events this week. So yeah, it's been a a very fast journey over the past 2 years, but I'm really excited for what's going to happen next.
That sounds so exciting. Yeah, as you say, jam-packed full of things. But I imagine it's a fascinating place to work. So really great to hear about how you got there and what you've been working on whilst you've been there. Georgia, could we hear from you now, please?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think my kind of interest in events probably started in university as well. I was really, I guess, just fascinated by being able to kind of peek behind the curtain and see all of the different people and all of the different, different creative skill sets and kind of all the different elements that come together to really create an experience that people, people talk about for the next couple of days, I guess. I mean, I'm really fascinated by how events fits in the marketing mix, and I guess how, like, I love the idea that something that might be written down on a post-it note today, like an idea or a concept or even a campaign, might actually be someone's experience tomorrow. And I think that's what really keeps me engaged with the kind of events industry. I think building that that journey for people and being able to kind of see the way it impacts people's lives as event planners and event marketers is a really interesting kind of point for me. That's how I see myself fitting in.
That's fascinating. I think everyone's so people focused, and I think that's so much what this industry is about. So it's lovely to hear so much about it, especially as we're hopefully beginning to be able to open up soon and all get back in rooms together. Exciting stuff. Beckie, if we could hear from you next, please.
Yeah, certainly. So I actually did my first stint in the industry when I was doing my work experience. So it was pre-university, and I actually went into a hotel to do a week's work experience, and I was 16 at the time. And I remember the GM of the hotel saying in my report that went back to school, Beckie will go far if she chooses an industry, a career in this industry. And I remember sort of thinking, oh, he has no idea, that's not what I'm going to do. Anyway, and then kind of fast forward to I left school. I actually left school in 2001. And I went into a hotel job. By 2008, I was a reception manager in a hotel. And then in 2008, I then at the end of the 2008 moved across into the agency side. So I worked for a small agency. We were then acquired by one of the largest travel management companies. So that was a bit of a shift to kind of go from a small creative agency up to a travel management company, and that I think was a bit of a spark for some of the things that we'll talk about later on today for me. I was an event manager in that capacity, so I was very fortunate to deliver events from kind of Singapore through to North America and for some variety of clients. And that for me, a bit like Jade said, is something about getting in a room and seeing that post-it note that Georgia referred to suddenly becoming something that's in front of you. And I don't have much hair, but the hair I do have standing up on the back of your neck. Just that moment of kind of being able to engage people and see that come to life. It's been slightly more
Amelia, has this frozen for you too? Beg your pardon for interrupting.
Is it frozen for everyone?
Yeah. I would suggest, Amelia, can you perhaps go on to the next person and right, yes, Beckie's going to try and obviously come back in again.
Fab, absolutely. So yes, if we could hear from Benedicta next, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi. Well, really getting into the events industry, I grew up in a Ghanaian household, so growing up, my culture kind of exposed me to events. My mum was a caterer, my auntie was a decorator, event designer. So I kind of came in from the hospitality side. So I used to help my mum at events. And when we would go to events, it would just be nothing less than 100 people. So as you can imagine, quite large events. all the time, almost every weekend, kind of growing up. So that was kind of my first interest into the events industry, but there was never anything as, oh, you could be an events manager. So I never really kind of took interest in that and just thought, okay, I'm going to go do like a healthcare degree. And that was really just that. Well, as I got older, I kind of started to realize, okay, I actually have organizational skills. I like actually planning events. I like being at events. And, you know, seeing the fruition of, as the girl said, what they come up with. So my first real step, I would say, into the industry was in 2015, I would say. I had taken up hospitality roles before that, worked in customer service in Marks and Spencer's and things like that. But when I went to the Prince's Trust, I didn't get into hospitality. I wouldn't even know what you call it now. So like a diploma type of thing. So you do a 2-week work experience and then you have another 2 weeks with a coach. And that was kind of like my first real step into the industry to kind of see what was actually going on. Fast forward from that, I started my degree in 2017 at the University of Hertfordshire, where I studied business and event management. And during my degree, I kind of just use that time to look at what the corporate events industry looks like opposed to the social, because I just found that I wasn't really interested in doing things like weddings and stuff like that. I found that I was more interested in what businesses are doing and how businesses are passing their brand message through events. And luckily in my second year summer, I got a role in Maddox Events. I think they've changed their name now, where I was working on the Women in Tech series. And then after that, I got a job at American Express Global Business Travel, which is one of the largest travel management companies in the world. And I worked as a venue sourcing specialist. So I would source venues for our client on their account. And that kind of gave me an insight into a variety of events. So we worked on like product launches to, drug trials and stuff like that. So it was really, really interesting. And then I graduated last year in 2020, alongside starting the platform on Events 101, which kind of led me into the virtual event space, I would say, even though we were doing a bit more before that, but really brought me into the virtual event space on Events 101. And I've been working on that for the last year. So that's kind of my journey, I guess, in the events industry. And the other question was, I got involved in events because I just felt like it was more suited to my personality. I wasn't really the person that was going to sit down and be a lawyer, or, I did not like, I appreciate all the nurses and things out there, but it just wasn't for me. I tried a nursing degree and I hated it. I hated the hours. And I just felt the only part about that job which I loved was the fact that I got to speak to people and hear their experiences. And for me, that's what events encompasses, kind of hearing people's experiences and bringing their experiences to life. And the most important part of any event journey for me is post-event, because if you did the right thing or not. And usually I haven't really had a bad review yet. So I guess I'm on a good track.
Fantastic. Great to hear that. You can tell we're all people starved in this pandemic, because we're all also overawed by how much events bring people together, and such a lovely theme of ideas coming to life and getting to be part of that process of bringing an idea to life. So that's lovely to hear. So finally, if we could hear from Alex, please.
Sure. So I did a degree in European marketing, and much like Benedicta was saying, the elements of the live communications modules were super interesting to me. I love the idea that you could develop a person's connection with a brand or a product by immersing them in an environment or giving them an experience. So I guess that was where my initial interest in the industry was sparked. When I left uni, I joined a communications and events industry agency, and I was hooked on events, the fast pace, the kind of dynamic environment of events, and like the immediate adrenaline hit that you get of kind of job satisfaction that event delivery can give you. So yeah, that was how I got into, and I joined as an administrator, which was fantastic experience. I'm super passionate about event admin. I could bore you senseless about it and the impact it has across events, so don't even get me started on that. I have predominantly been agency side, although I have worked as part of embedded teams from client offices. I started out solely on global automotive programs, but then moved into other industries as well, so finance, retail, medical, NGOs, media and comms, hair, fashion and beauty. So I think probably for me, that's the beauty of the industry, is that you're able to work across so many kind of client styles, client types, event delivery methods, creative solutions, and constantly learn. And I've been lucky to have a lot of female role models amongst my colleagues, my bosses, kind of peers, suppliers, clients, throughout my journey. So yeah, good times.
Fantastic. You're so right about the range of the industry. It really, you can cover so many different areas, and that's a fantastic thing about it. So Beckie, I think you're back with us. So I wanted to ask, you are the Chief Amazement Officer at Events Raccoon, an agency which you founded, of course. And firstly, that is just such a bold title, and I would love to know how it came about. And secondly, sort of in relation to that, I expect you talk a lot about creativity and fun being at the core of what you do and what sets your agency apart. So I just wanted to ask how you think the events industry can harness creativity in everything that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, through various points in my career, there was a lot of this is the uniform that you will wear, this is the corporate image that you will perceive, and you probably would realise from looking at me that's a bit of a square peg in a round hole. So it's always one of the things when I set up the agency, it was a case of, well, what is the individual personality that everybody has, and what do they bring to their role? Because actually every agency that sits within that same space as you does the same thing, but it's how you do it and the people that you've got sat within your agency that makes that so different. So for me, it was very much a case of bringing the personality into the job titles. So anybody who starts working with the Events Raccoon, the first thing they do is to choose their own job title, and that's based on what they're going to bring to their role and what's important for them and how they want to make it their own. So yeah, the Chief Amazement Officer, it's quite a title, but it fundamentally means that the buck stops with me. It's my agency, so it's down to me to inspire not only our customers but our staff. You know, the team needs to be able to push back on me, they need to be able to push back onto the clients, and effectively it sets a bar that we have to not only hit but we have to exceed. So it's accountability to the team, it's personality, and it's accountability to myself as well. And in terms of the creativity in the industry and kind of having fun, I think, gosh, if the last 12 months hasn't shown us the importance of being creative and pushing the walls of the box, it's the case I don't just find the box but smash through the walls and think outside of it. And as I said at the beginning in my introduction, from our agency's point of view, it's about creating those connections and the engagement when people do get together. Now, that hemorrhaged at the beginning of lockdown, and people were crying out for it, not only just in terms of, well, how do we do it, but we need it even more so than ever. So actually, I think the industry has done incredibly well in the last 12 months, and the agencies have had to adapt so that the clients are able to have those experiences in a very different way. And I don't think there's any substitute for getting into a room and having those feelings that we've all spoken about. But that also doesn't mean we can just sit back for 12 months and just let our teams and our clients just kind of run ragged and not have something. So yeah, I think the agency, the association, so the industry has done a very good job of harnessing that creativity.
Absolutely, yeah, completely agree. And I love that concept of the title, that everyone makes one that is ascribed to their individual personality. I think that's a wonderful approach to a company and making sure everyone's voices are really heard within that. So really exciting. Benedicta, I'd like to come to you next, because I know you do a huge amount of work to make this industry more diverse. And I'd like to know what you think the industry should be doing or focusing on to ensure that the industry really is more diverse and inclusive in the future, and that this isn't just a conversation that we're having over and over again, but something that really does happen.
I'll come from the perspective of a venue sourcer, just because I think that's kind of like the starting point of any event. And I've worked in community and obviously in corporate, so I've seen kind of like both sides in comparison. And I would say that from the perspective of events as a venue sourcer, that's one of the things that hinders an event, whether it's going to go ahead or not. Let's start with the venue. And I think as we move into this new era, we have to be more fluid. Like, fluidity is actually key. Being able to accommodate people without being presumptuous. And I think if I'm looking from a venue perspective, as an example, planning an event for a corporate client in comparison to planning an event for a community organization is completely different when you come to the venue stage. Because if I go to a venue and say, oh, I'm hosting this event for example, my client Johnson & Johnson, XYZ, opposed to going to a venue for a community organization which I work for, their questioning and their reactions are going to be completely different. So I think that is one starting point. Venues being able to accommodate different types of events. I don't think, obviously, some venues are heritage venues and therefore limited in the types of events they can hold. However, if we're looking at a venue that's like a hotel, I think there should be no limitations, for example, onto the types of events which they host, because then that limits the type of people which do come to places like venues. And then I'll go on to the point of making more diverse supplier networks. How are venues or how are events managers actually diversifying their supplier networks? How are years of experience, say someone that has been in the industry doing event design for 20 years, opposed to someone who has actually been in the industry maybe for a year or two, I think both should be given the same opportunities to present their work. And oftentimes in the events industry, I feel like that isn't the case. And I did have this conversation earlier on in the pandemic that I think the industry has been very rigid on, oh, you need to have 10 years of experience to do X or 5 years of experience to do that. But it's not really needed right now, because the pandemic has created a level playing field. Everybody has access to everything now. So I don't, as an events industry as a whole, I don't think there should be any walls up. I don't think there should be anything that for example, as a maybe an event designer, I can still present my work to, I'll use a wild example, like Savoy. So someone I've been doing events for 2 years, I want to go to the Savoy, why can't I? And things like that. I think the rigidity of like supplier networks is something that definitely needs to change. And then I'll just say encompassing all types of people as well. So like the work we do with Events 101, just trying to create opportunities. So not just saying, oh, you want to have experience in the events industry, okay, come and you'll be taking the hospitality role. My question kind of, I guess, in my mind is hospitality the right, pathway into the events industry? Because that's kind of the way that I came from. And I feel like a lot of my experiences coming in from that way were good, but some people may not necessarily want to be hours on their feet, serving people and things like that. So what's the other way in which we can, encompass all, I guess, pathways into the industry? I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Benedicta. I felt there was so much great practical advice there. And the point about the pandemic, in a way, creating this level playing field is so true, because we're all figuring out, as we were saying just before this call, we're all figuring out virtual events and hybrid events and the technology to use them. So it really is an opportunity for, I think, the events industry to bring down some of those barriers to entry. So thank you. That was really great. Jade, you mentioned the Telegraph. You managed the Telegraph's largest conference of the year, Women Mean Business. So I wanted to know what your perspective on gender equality in the industry is, and if there's any specific areas that you think require work, any spaces to focus on.
Yeah, definitely. So I think sort of touching on something that that Alex actually mentioned earlier is that events is an extremely female-dominated industry. And I think actually that is something to be celebrated. There's definitely not that many industries out there that can say the same. And I think that is an amazing thing. And the same goes for not just roles at my level, where I'm fairly new to the industry, but also all the way up into senior roles. From my personal experience so far in the industry, all of those roles have also been filled by women. So I think in terms of that, we're doing a pretty good job. And that's not to say, obviously, that there aren't an incredible amount of amazing men in the industry as well, because of course there are, and that's what's great. It's not, although it's female dominated, it's not all about the women. I think it's a fairly well balanced industry from that respect. I think when I sort of was thinking about this question, one thing that I thought maybe we all might think that the industry needs some work on is more actually content. So when I'm thinking of speaker lineups and diversity of speaker lineups, one thing I think everyone is sort of becoming more aware of and trying to strive for is gender equality in speaker lineups. And I think sort of, again, I know we're going to touch on sort of the past year, but one thing that virtual events has sort of helped to progress that along with is making speaking at events more accessible for working mums, because so we had an online conference last November, Technology Intelligence, and one of our speakers had a fairly newborn baby, I think just under 6 months, and she said if she'd have had to travel to London, take half a day out of her time, she would have had to turn the opportunity down, because obviously having a newborn child, it just wouldn't be feasible. Whereas she was able to pop to a different room in her house for half an hour to take part. And I just think that is an incredible thing for moving forward for gender equality. And also the same probably goes for us working. I mean, I don't have a family or kids myself at the moment, but I know that for many others in the industry that do, being able to run events from your desk at home or even from the office, but not being on site all day, has probably helped sort of like that work-life balance in terms of that. And not to say obviously that we don't want to get back to being on site, because of course we do, but I think moving forward into the future, when we're looking at maybe doing more hybrid stuff and things like that, I think all of what we've learned over the past year can really help us step forward with gender equality.
I think you're so right that accessibility that virtual has given us is something we must make sure we don't ever lose. You know, as much as we're desperate to be back to in-person events, that's been such a huge thing for a lot of people. I think being able to access events as speakers and as delegates that they wouldn't necessarily have been able to access otherwise. So thank you, Jade. Georgia, I'm going to come to you next. You were named as one of the CN 30 under 30 last year, as was Jade. Why do you think programs like this that highlight rising stars and young talent are important? And kind of continuing on from that, what do you think can be done to get more people to consider the events industry as a career? So to try and engage more young people in the possibility of the events industry, that kind of thing.
Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, I mean, I think rising star programs like the one you mentioned, which you also nominated for, so congratulations, are crucial. I mean, I do feel like so often in kind of the event marketing world, the kind of final output, so the event or the experience or the campaign, is often the piece of comms that's, you know, heralded as what's been executed so brilliantly. And I think sometimes the people kind of behind the curtain or pulling the strings or kind of coordinating the whole piece can get forgotten along the way sometimes. So I think they are incredibly important. Motivating and kind of re-engaging the next generation of event staff as well. I mean, the CN event that we all attended was a perfect example of ways to build our networks and kind of network with each other and build some new connections in the industry. So I think they're really important. And I think kind of finding ways to motivate people, particularly in the world we live in now, will be just as important. Yeah, and kind of going on to your second point there around re-engaging young people as to look at the events industry as a career, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done, to be honest. I mean, we touched a bit earlier on shaking this idea of being wedding planners. And I think it's something that we always come back to, because there is a bit of a misconception and perhaps even an education piece that needs to happen, I guess, around just how involved the work that we do really is. I mean, the variety and the variety of roles and the kind of variety of creative outputs and thinking and strategy that needs to kind of come together to build a fully integrated, successful event is incredible. And I think as well, when we talk about bringing people in the industry, I kind of don't want to get lost in thinking that it's just event planners that we should be building up. You know, it is the designers, it is the creatives, it is the production teams and the suppliers and so on. So I think there's, I guess, just a different conversation to be had about really what it means to work in our industry, because I think the roles are so varied, and you can go so far and with so many different angles and sectors that yeah, I think the grassroots initiatives are really important, definitely.
Sorry, just coming off mute. But yeah, I think you're so right that misconception is really there, and so interesting to hear about all of your journeys earlier. And most of us have sort of stumbled into the events industry, even just through, you know, doing an event at school or at uni or whatever. Jade, would you like to jump in there? I can see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because obviously I did an events management degree, and I know that a lot of people coming into the events industry don't necessarily have, as you said, they might have stumbled in. But I think even there's work to be done there. I would say that I learned a lot of practical things during my degree that of course have helped me in my roles that I've had since. But one thing that sort of wasn't really taught to us, which is kind of what Georgia was saying, is the range of roles that are available. Like, we were taught about the range of industries. So we knew about the corporate event industry, we knew about festivals, we knew about all of that. But I left uni not really knowing what direction I wanted to take in events, because I wasn't aware of the different directions available. And it was only when I started applying for jobs and interviewing for them that I discovered, oh no, I don't really like that area of events, or I do like this area. And so I sort of ended up finding that operations and logistics was the part of events that I really wanted to be a part of. But like you say, there's marketing, there's production, there's venue management, and all of that side, I just had no idea about all of those different parts. And I think that's something that really could do some work in terms of educating people that are studying events management, because I know it has become such a popular degree to study now. And I think that was a really important part that was kind of missed off. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that on.
No, thank you so much, Jade. That was really helpful. Benedicta, did you have something to add there?
No, I was just going to add that I'm really happy that you guys did bring that up, because as a recent graduate as well, that was something that I faced, and which really motivated me to, I guess I will plug here, Events 101, start our online sessions, just talking about the different roles which are available in the industry, in the different sectors, and even moving on to hosting our Bridging the Gap event last year with event grads and Get Ahead in events. So those are kind of resources which are out there as well, which you could, I guess, utilize for anyone that is watching that is on in a degree that's still kind of thinking about what they couldn't and what's available to them. It's on YouTube. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely check that out then. So I'd now like to speak to Alex, who I know that your sustainability is a passion of yours and something you've achieved high-level certification in. And so I just wanted to ask, how do you think the industry is doing in terms of its relationship to sustainability? I know it's been a big question this year. How can we be better? Where should the focus be? Because it's such a broad, I feel like lots of the conversations I'm having about it are about how broad it is and how we decide where to focus first. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can apply a relationship status, but I think probably complicated would be our current relationship status. We're definitely not single, but I don't think we're quite connected. I mean, realistically, behind energy, transport and the associated kind of movement of people and things around the globe is the second largest activity that's responsible for global carbon emissions. Add to that the fact that events are so, there are elements of it that are so disposable in nature, we probably aren't nearly as far along the road as we need to be. That said, I think we are in a really exciting moment for the events industry. We have a shift towards genuine collaboration between organisations, stepping outside of seeing sustainability as a badge and truly making it a meaningful integration into our operations, which is fantastic. We already work with a global mindset, so we've got a foot in the door. We understand that we're part of a global community, so we have responsibilities that extend further than our kind of local sphere of consciousness. I think we now have some really incredible people leading the sustainability movement within the events industry that we can look to for training and tools and supporting us in implementing our sustainability actions and monitoring. So that's great. I think the pandemic has moved event technology forward, probably, I mean, maybe 5 years, maybe more. So in terms of what's possible, bringing people together virtually, it's completely opened that up, but it's also opened up conversations amongst ourselves and with clients and budget owners about looking at different ways of delivering events and extending the kind of ROI impact, behavioural change conversations around events. We can actually extend that conversation to ROE, so the return on environment. And I think the past 12 months have given us the opportunity to really leverage those conversations. And I think broadly as an industry, we recognise that if we're going to be attractive as employers for the next generation of event professionals, we have to be part of sustainability action, because the future leaders of our industry just won't accept us taking a lethargic approach to sustainability. They don't want to work for those type of organisations. So I think complicated but much better than we were is probably our relationship status. I think in terms of what we could be doing better, I think we probably need to unpack the narrative around climate action so that we can support organisations and people who feel it's not their area of expertise, and make sure we're kind of bringing everyone along for the ride, and understand that sustainability doesn't sit just as a responsibility for the sustainability managers in the organisation, that it's everybody that needs to be involved, in the same way as there's not one person responsible for health and safety or risk assessment in your events. Everybody has a sustainability responsibility when you're delivering a programme. And I think we need to be better at striking a balance when we talk about particularly climate action. We need to make sure that we are talking about the urgency of action, but also demystifying what those actions are and keep those communications kind of open and honest for people, and ensure it's something that people feel they can get engaged with, and it's not for the sustainability people, that it's something for all of us. I think we've seen positive impacts over the last 12 months. Obviously, the wholesale reduction in global travel and live events delivery has significantly reduced carbon emissions compared to live events. But we also shouldn't pretend that virtual events are a carbon neutral activity. They're not. I think there's one estimate that I saw suggested that the communications activity and communications technology by 2030 could actually be using something like 20% of global energy usage. And that's huge. So that comes from network data transfer, where we've got these huge data centers requiring epic cooling systems to run them. That's, you know, individuals attending from multiple locations, so they're heating, lighting, running those rather than just being in one centralized location. The energy required to power our devices that we're connecting from. And one of the things that staggered me when you add it all up is that an email, sending one simple, a few lines email, takes something like has an emissions calculation of something like 4 grams of CO2. If you add an attachment, that goes up to 50 grams of CO2. So if you just, you know, if you exponentially expand that across, I think we just need to not shy away from the elephant in the room, that is actually virtual events have a footprint, and there are ways of measuring it, and we're becoming, you know, increasingly more sophisticated in doing that, but not pretending that we've done our bit by running a virtual event, and not sending people to an event. It's infinitely better than global travel, obviously, but we need to be realistic and face ourselves in the mirror and be honest about that. I think in terms of where the focus should be, we need to understand our kind of short, medium and long-term goals. I was laughing because the first time we got together as ladies together to introduce ourselves to each other, I suddenly got on my soapbox about people. I feel quite strongly that right now we have some immediate people concerns. I think particularly around women and the environment. So working remotely on paper looks great for women who have families, but actually we need to be mindful of the fact that childcare has been completely obliterated. So there's no wraparound childcare, there's no external childcare services for people, or at least what's been put in place is really skeleton. So actually that's driven a lot of women out of the workforce, because without childcare and without that structure in place, you simply can't do your job. So working from home is great for a lot of people, but I think we need to be honest about the fact that it doesn't always work for women as a you know, kind of whole group. Again, we talked about when we first got together, I passionately feel that we need to look at what training and career development journeys look like in a remote working environment, how we're presenting people with opportunities still, we're making sure that people are visible, that they're seeing where their career development could go, and making sure that the people in the wider organisations can see them. From a climate perspective, obviously, we have to have a focus on climate. So I think I passionately feel that the last 12 months have really given us a shot across the bows of how susceptible we are to any kind of crisis on a global scale, and where the inequalities of that kind of crisis impact sit, or the inequalities, should I say. And I hope that we take the current global pandemic as effectively a dress rehearsal of what a global climate crisis could look like, and the impact that actually a climate crisis in one area of the world can potentially impact everybody. And so that we understand that it's not just a scientific concept, that it is an impending reality, and that we have to take meaningful steps. I mean, even if we just look at some of the wider action around the world on kind of climate action, we have to be aware of and preparing for the possibility of a regulated carbon market or a carbon tax. So that's where a carbon price is applied to greenhouse gas emissions. So depending on where the responsibility for that pricing could sit, whether it's a global carbon market or the responsibility sits nationally or regionally, though the kind of price per tonne of your greenhouse gas emissions, and the concept is that the biggest offenders pay the biggest price, and so, but that cost could range from anything to $2 a tonne, which is where the Trump administration sat, although Joe Biden's administration's just kind of fixed it at $52 a tonne, I think. And that, you know, some estimates go up to $130, $180 a tonne. And this is for everything that you can't mitigate, where you're still emitting greenhouse gases. You are effectively paying for those emissions. So these are costs that potentially we need to factor into our operations, business and event operations. So whether you're a sustainability expert or not, there's a strong case for taking climate action now and future-proofing your business against climate legislation that could be coming in the future.
Thank you so much, Alex. So much insight there. Really, really valuable response. Thank you. We are running out of time, or slightly over, but I have one more thing I'd like to just ask the panel. So I'm going to be cheeky and see if they'll stick with us for another couple of minutes. But I'd really love to know that what you guys hope to see changed, or hope to change yourselves about the industry, events industry across your career, and potentially the impact of the pandemic within that. Has it helped the thing that you want changed, or hindered it. So Jade, if we could hear from you first, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think actually I probably didn't realise the change that I wanted to see until the past 12 months happened, and that is that we've discovered that hybrid is definitely where we are going. We're only running virtual events at the moment, and it's looking like we're probably going to stay that way until the beginning of next year. But when we do return, there's no doubt about it, we're going to be doing hybrid events. We've managed to connect with people all over the world, whereas normally most of our events are based in the UK, specifically London. We don't tend to reach such a big audience, but the Telegraph has an international subscription base. So we've managed to reach those. And I think that will only be able to continue through doing things hybrid. I think also over the past 12 months, everyone has realised how important events are to people. Everyone wants to go get their haircut, and everyone wants to see people again. They want to go to festivals, they want to go to concerts, they want to have those connections that everyone has been missing over the past 12 months. And I think the events industry, like we were saying, almost needs a newfound respect in some sense about what we do. We're not always party planners and things like that, and that's another thing, in that people have realized that events are really important to make connections. So yeah, I think, trying to be concise because I know we're running out of time, hybrid is where I see things going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jade. That's really, really interesting to know that it's so part of the plan, the hybrid stuff. Georgia, could we hear from you next, please?
Yeah, I think for me, it's it comes back to the sustainable practice kind of the outlook. I mean, everything that Alex was saying was really hitting home for me. Certainly, I mean, even in the past 12 months, you know, I don't think we'll see another chance like this, at least in our lifetimes, to really stop and reset and evaluate what we're doing in our day-to-day practice, but also the influence we have as agencies, you know, the reach that we have across our networks, and kind of how this is going to be everyone's problem. And I think, I mean, at least for us, it's the biggest issue I see the generation facing, obviously, after this pandemic. And so, yeah, I mean, all of the different kind of prongs that come out for that. I mean, where do you even start? But even things like looking at our supplier lists, you know, putting in place the relationships and the conversations where we can have a conversation with someone that maybe is a supplier and say, you know, what is your sustainability policy? Do you have one? If not, then we will take our business elsewhere. And kind of understanding the influence that we all play in that, you know, that economy. I mean, I think the big focus as well will be this idea of a circular economy, and how we understand that everything that we buy, or everything that we invest in, you know, has a journey. And where is that piece of plastic going, or where is that stand that we've built, or that stage, or whatever it is. I guess just understanding where it's going, how we can make little decisions along the way to make sure that it does have a second life, or that you know, we can be making decisions that might actually be hugely beneficial to where the industry is going, and also have a sustainable impact at the same time.
Absolutely, Georgia. Thank you so much. Alex, could we hear from you, please?
I mean, I can be really quick, because I think Benedicta, I felt like she kind of reached into my mind and grabbed my thoughts earlier. I was like, oh my God, I'm with you, girl. I strongly feel that entrepreneurs and startups are going to be the lifeblood of how we move forward. And I would love to genuinely see people change the perception that small or new is a negative kind of connotation. We're a creative industry. I think the rule book's been torn up over the last 12 months. And my hope is that the playing field is level for companies and individuals, regardless of their size, because I think that's where the most exciting developments will come from.
Absolutely. Love that. Yeah, thank you. Benedicta, could we hear from you now, please?
Hi. So I'll just conclude by saying that the industry is an £84 billion industry, and I guess is getting, you know, worth more. And it's not because of we can boil it down to many things, but it's ultimately down because of our people. And I think what I would want to see is young people moving from, a monetary value to self-actualization, because I feel like as an events professional, you may not necessarily realize your role in society often, and society, you don't realize your role, society doesn't realize your role either. And I think that, as one of the girls said, that the respect of our industry, and also I think even companies and organizations looking after their events professionals as well. We don't need to be working 24 hours a day, and just small things like that, which will actually be more attractive for people to come to the industry and flourish effectively and be more creative and create better experiences for the country and for businesses. So moving forward, that's what I would want to see, just us nurturing our people and allowing more people in.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. If we could hear from Beckie now, finally.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, it's kind of all of the above that the girls have mentioned on, and it crosses across everything. And Alex's stats on sustainability, quite frankly, terrify me, but in a good way. And I think it is about the sustainability of the environment, the sustainability of the industry, but it's the sustainability of our people as well. And I think over the last 12 months, I think we've all probably been pushed to the brink of our own sustainability in terms of what we can cope with physically, mentally, emotionally. And I think mental health has been another massive hot topic that has really kind of been brought to the peripheral for so many people in the last sort of 12 months. And I think I want that to continue in terms of the awareness of that and the pressure that not only this industry puts on people, and again, Jade mentioned it earlier, as did Georgia, in terms of people's expectations of this industry when they come into it. I think you need to come into it with your eyes wide open, because it's an incredible industry to be in, but it's not an easy one. And especially in the last 12 months, and we're all learning from the ground up, and like Benedicta said, it does level the playing field slightly. But I think it's a case of making sure that we are taking some of the key learnings from the last 12 months and really growing on that. So not going back in terms of the sustainability of how we run the events. Absolutely, hybrid is going to be here to stay. There needs to be that work-life balance, and the power needs to go back as an even balance, I think, between the employee and the employer in terms of how they work and where they work from. And I think all of that combined with helping the next gen come through, and being mindful of the mental health, I think will give us that circular economy. Georgie, you mentioned it perfectly, but it includes the people as well for me, I think.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, all of you. That was a really fascinating to hear your perspectives, and I think that we all want to be working in an events industry that makes that change happen and makes that the reality that we live in the sector that we live in. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. I'll just pass over to Claire, who's going to say a final goodbye. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. It was a real pleasure to hear from you all, and a very wide variety of experiences as well, which makes for really interesting listening as well. So thank you all for taking part, and thank you to all of our attendees for joining us this afternoon. I would just like to remind everybody that we have another session, the last of our sessions for the month in support of International Women's Day month. Next week, we've got aspirational women in the corporate film industry. So this is the other aspect of EVCOM, and that is 31st of March at 2 p.m. And as I say, we'll conclude our monthly program. But once again, thank you all, and to let you know that this will be made available on our website as a recording, and any resources that you might want to offer. I know there were a few mentions of websites. I think Benedicta suggested something. If you could please send us those as well, and we add them in as resources, and it sits permanently on our website, so people can come back to this and have another listen and have a look at those helpful resources. But that's it for now. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you all again sometime, and I hope to see some of you at an event at some point in the next 6 months. Okay, bye for now. Thank you.